It was a quiet night in the small town of Harrison, Virginia, the kind of place where even the wind seemed to whisper secrets. Arif, a young graphic designer who had moved from Boston a year ago, had just finished catching up on emails in his cramped apartment. The streets outside were empty, the occasional streetlight flickering as if warning him that something was off. Arif's phone sat on the edge of the desk, an older model he'd refused to upgrade. Its simple design made it easier to ignore notifications, or so he thought. He was about to plug it in when it rang. Startled, he froze. The screen showed unknown number. At 11:47 p.m., he rarely received calls, especially from strangers. Probably a wrong number, he muttered, though unease prickled at the back of his neck. He answered. Hello? His voice sounded louder than intended in the still apartment. Silence. Just when he thought the call had dropped, a faint whisper slithered through the receiver. Arif. His stomach tightened. How did this person know his name? Who is this? He asked, trying to sound calm. Why didn't you save me? The voice, cold and urgent, made the hair on the back of his neck rise. Arif's mind raced. That voice, he knew it. Ethan, his childhood friend from Harrison, who had died 3 years ago in a car accident along Route 23. No, it can't be, Arif whispered, gripping the phone tightly. The line went silent. Then, without warning, a scream erupted, raw, guttural, and filled with unimaginable pain. It echoed inside his skull even after he slammed the phone back onto the desk. Arif's apartment felt colder now, the shadows stretching unnaturally along the walls. He tried to laugh it off. Some prank, yeah, that's all it is, he murmured, but the laugh felt hollow. He returned to the living room couch, trying to shake the fear. His eyes kept darting to the phone, lying there innocently, its screen dark. Minutes crawled by, each tick of the wall clock louder than the last. At 11:12 p.m., the phone rang again. Arif froze. This time, it wasn't on the desk. It was on the bedside table, where he had not placed it. The glow of the screen seemed unnatural in the dark room. Unknown number. Every instinct screamed at him not to answer. Yet, despite the terror clawing at his chest, he lifted the phone. Hello? His voice barely rose above a whisper. Breathing. Heavy, uneven, suffocatingly close. Why didn't you save me, Arif? It was Ethan's voice, unmistakable, and yet impossible. The man he had buried 3 years ago was now speaking through this device. Arif's hand shook violently as he dropped the phone. It bounced once, the screen cracking slightly, but the ringing didn't stop. It was coming from the phone itself, or maybe from somewhere inside the walls. The room temperature seemed to drop. Frost formed along the edges of the window, and his breath came out in visible clouds. Shadow stretched across the room, twisting unnaturally, moving towards him. He backed into the corner of the bed, eyes wide, heart hammering. Then the phone stopped ringing. Silence returned, but it was the kind of silence that screamed in your ears. Arif's mind raced. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't leave the room. And deep down, he realized the voice had not just called him, it had marked him. Because whoever or whatever was on the line, it wasn't done. And it would call again. Arif didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the apartment sounded like a footstep. Every gust of wind outside felt like a whisper in his ear. He kept the lights on, clutching a baseball bat more out of instinct than belief. But when dawn came, he felt no safer. He decided he needed answers. Ethan's death had always bothered him. A car accident, the police said, but something about it never sat right. The accident had happened on Route 23, a long, winding highway just outside Harrison, surrounded by dense forests and fog that rolled in unpredictably. People joked that the road was cursed. Locals whispered about strange lights, phantom vehicles, and ghostly figures that vanished into the trees. Arif had never believed those stories. Until now. By 10 a.m., armed with his phone, still trembling in his hand, and a backpack with essentials, Arif left his apartment. The streets of Harrison were quiet, the town still waking up from the foggy night. He drove to Route 23, the forest looming like a wall on either side. The closer he got to the accident site, the heavier the air felt, like he was driving through water. He parked near a bend in the road where Ethan had lost control. The metal guardrail was twisted, scorched, and painted with old, faded graffiti. Arif knelt, running his fingers over the worn asphalt, trying to recall every detail from the old police report. A sudden sound made him jump, a phone ringing, his own phone, coming from inside his backpack. "Hello?" he whispered. "Why didn't you save me, Arif?" The voice was closer now, as if standing beside him. He spun around. The forest was empty. Birds chirped in the distance, but the temperature had dropped. His breath came out in clouds. "Ethan, is that you?" Arif stammered. No response, just heavy breathing, echoing, overlapping his own heartbeat. Then he saw it, a figure at the edge of the trees, slender, hunched, movement unnatural. The fog twisted around it. Arif squinted. The closer he looked, the more the figure resembled Ethan, but twisted, broken, eyes hollow and black. Arif stumbled backward, tripping over the uneven asphalt. The phone slipped from his hands and clattered to the ground. The ringing continued, now louder, sharper, almost mechanical. "Arif," the voice moaned, now multiplied, echoing from every direction. "You left me." Panic surged. Arif ran toward his car, but the figure glided toward him faster than humanly possible. Branches scratched his arms and face, but the figure didn't flinch. Every step it took seemed to make the air heavier, pressing down on him. He reached the car, yanking the door open, fumbling for the keys. His phone, still on the asphalt, flashed with a message. "You can't escape me." Arif slams the door, locked it, and pressed the accelerator. The road twisted beneath him, fog blurring everything. But no matter how fast he drove, the figure appeared at every bend, standing silently in the middle of the road, waiting. Then headlights. Another car appeared behind him, fast, almost too fast, blinding him. But when he looked in the rearview mirror, there was no car, only the fog, only the figure. Arif's heart pounded, sweat ran down his face, and then the phone rang again, inside the car. "Arif." The voice was not just Ethan's anymore. It was layered, distorted, countless voices screaming, whispering, crying. Every story he had heard about haunted roads and restless spirits suddenly made sense. Route 23 wasn't just cursed, it was a trap, and he was caught. The figure was on the hood of the car. The brake lights didn't respond. The engine roared. And the phone rang. One last time. "I'm here." The morning fog on Route 23 was thick, wrapping the forest in a suffocating gray. Arif's car finally skidded to a halt on a narrow shoulder, engine coughing and stuttering, as if it too feared what was on the road. His hands shook uncontrollably on the steering wheel, and the phone, still ringing, lay on the passenger seat. "Arif?" the voice hissed again, but this time it wasn't coming from the phone. It was around him, inside the car, in the air, in his mind. The words echoed in his skull, layered with the screams of Ethan, distorted and broken, and other voices he couldn't identify. Arif pressed both hands to his head, his vision blurred, and the car windows fogged from the cold sweat pouring from his body. The rearview mirror caught a glimpse of movement, not outside, but behind him, in the back seat. A shadow, hunched and twisting, with dark, hollow eyes staring straight at him. He screamed, but no sound came out. The shadow tilted its head, whispering, "You left me. Again." The phone vibrated violently. Arif snatched it up, and the screen flashed multiple notifications, messages from unknown numbers, all the same chilling sentence, "Save me or join me." He bolted out of the car, leaving the keys and phone behind. The forest surrounded him like a living wall. Every step he took seemed to echo unnaturally, yet no birds or animals stirred. The figure appeared at every turn. It wasn't walking, it was gliding, moving faster than his eyes could track, always in his peripheral vision. Arif's mind raced. Memories of Ethan flooded back, childhood pranks, laughter, nights spent riding bikes along Route 23. And then, the accident. He remembered the police report. Ethan's car had gone off the guardrail, flipped, and landed in the trees. No one had survived. Arif had felt guilt then, fleeting, easy to dismiss, but now that guilt had become something alive. "Stop!" Arif yelled. I'm sorry." The figure paused, tilting its head, silent. But the forest itself seemed to react. The trees groaned as if in pain. The fog thickened, curling around his legs like grasping hands. The air smelled of smoke and iron. A whisper from every direction. "You couldn't save me. Now you'll see." Suddenly, the ground beneath him shifted. Roots burst through the asphalt, cracking it open. Shadows twisted into shapes of other lost souls, faces twisted in torment, arms reaching for him. The whispers grew louder, voices overlapping, screaming, crying. Arif tripped and fell into a shallow ditch at the edge of the road. The shadow loomed over him, Ethan's distorted face inches from his own. "Here," it said, voice both his friend and something else, something inhuman. "Forever." Arif snapped backward, heart hammering. A cold wind slammed into him, and the forest seemed to swallow the sound of the world outside. His phone rang again, in his hand. But now, it wasn't a call. The screen showed a live video of himself, lying in the ditch, his terrified face reflected back in the glowing light. And above it, written in the mist creeping along the screen, "Join me before it's too late." The trees shifted, and suddenly Arif realized he was no longer on the road. The highway, the streetlights, his car, all gone. He was trapped in a gray void, shadows pressing in, whispering his name. And in the center, a figure formed from every lost soul of Route 23, Ethan at the forefront, eyes black, mouth twisted in a scream that echoed endlessly. Arif's body shook uncontrollably. "No, no," he screamed. "I won't." The shadows lunged. The wind carried the sound of hundreds of voices screaming his name, and the phone in his hand buzzed violently, vibrating as if alive. The last thing Arif saw before everything went black was Ethan's face, impossibly close, whispering, "You can't run from me, Arif." Arif awoke with a gasp, sprawled on the cold asphalt of Route 23, though the sun had already risen. The fog from last night had lifted, leaving the trees sun-drenched and seemingly normal. His car was gone. The forest around him looked ordinary. Quiet birds chirping, leaves rustling. It was as if the horrors of the night had been a dream. But his phone told a different story. Its screen was cracked, the battery drained, and yet it buzzed faintly, a distorted vibration that made the hair on his arms stand on end. He picked it up. The screen flashed a single message: "Follow the path. Find me." Arif's chest tightened. He had no choice. Fear and guilt pushed him forward. The path was a narrow dirt trail, lined with twisted trees that cast strange shadows even in daylight. As he walked, the whispers began again, soft at first, like a distant radio static, then louder, overlapping, chaotic. "You couldn't save me. Arif, join us." Every step seemed to draw him deeper into the forest's heart, where the air grew colder and the sun struggled to reach through thick branches. The forest floor became littered with debris, old shoes, broken toys, fragments of metal. They looked like remnants of forgotten tragedies. Then he saw it, a small abandoned cabin, weathered gray, sitting off the trail. Windows boarded up, but the front door slightly ajar. The phone buzzed again. On the screen, a live view of the cabin interior appeared before him, but the image shimmered like it was underwater, and in the corner of the frame, a shadow stirred. His hands shook as he pushed the door open. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the smell of mold and rust. On the wooden floor lay an old rotary phone, oddly pristine. A note beside it read in scrawled handwriting, "I'm waiting for you." He approached. As he lifted the receiver, static filled the line. Then Ethan's voice emerged, soft, almost pleading. "Ethan, I didn't want this. They won't let me rest." Arif's throat grew dry. Who are they?" he asked. Static grew louder, voices overlapping, hundreds of screams, moans, whispers. "The lost, the forgotten, those who were taken before their time. We're trapped, and now so are you." Arif realized the truth. The phone calls, the figures on Route 23, the shadows in the forest, they weren't just haunting him, they were collecting him. Ethan's spirit had been caught between worlds, unable to move on, and somehow, through the phone, he had tried to reach out to the living. "And if I try to stop them?" Arif asked, voice trembling. A pause. Then Ethan's distorted, desperate tone. "You can't stop what's already begun, but maybe you can survive it." The room suddenly went icy. Shadows spilled from the corners, crawling along the walls and floor. The static in the phone grew deafening, and in the midst of it, Arif saw them. Dozens of figures, twisted and broken, faces frozen in terror, all silently reaching towards him. He ran, out of the cabin, down the trail, heart hammering, lungs burning. The forest twisted unnaturally, pathways shifting beneath his feet. Every step brought whispers, every shadow seemed to stretch towards him. Then a clearing. Sunlight broke through for the first time, and he saw the road ahead, Route 23. Relief surged, but it was short-lived. The road was littered with abandoned vehicles, wreckage, and the unmistakable silhouette of Ethan standing in the middle, staring directly at him. Arif skidded to a halt. The phone rang again, this time not in his hand, but on the hood of a wrecked car. Its screen displayed a countdown. 5, 4, 3. Arif realized, with a sinking horror, that whatever force had taken Ethan and all the lost souls of Route 23 wasn't finished. It was waiting for him. Arif's hands shook as he gripped the phone, the countdown still flashing on the cracked screen. 2, 1. The air exploded with sound. A chorus of voices, screams, whispers, and pleas filled his ears. Shadows surged from the wrecked cars, the forest, the road itself, twisting into monstrous shapes. And in the center, Ethan's figure, impossibly tall, black eyes hollow, mouth stretched in a scream that wasn't his own, reached toward Arif. Arif ran, every instinct screaming at him. The forest paths had shifted again, trapping him in a looping maze. The phone rang, not once, not twice, but repeatedly, each ring syncing with the beating of his heart. He answered, desperate. "Arif," Ethan's voice, layered now with hundreds of others, whispered, "It's not too late. Join us." "No," Arif screamed. "I won't." The shadows surged, hands clawing, trying to drag him down, but he remembered something Ethan had once said as a child. "If you want to escape fear, face it." He forced himself to stand, raising the phone high. The ringing intensified, static tearing through the air. He spoke clearly, loud enough for every shadow to hear. "I will not be part of this." A blinding light exploded from the phone, cutting through the shadows. Figures shrieked and twisted, vanishing into the fog.
Ethan's face appeared, close, pained, pleading. "You can save yourself," he whispered. Arif felt the shadows clawing at his legs, trying to pull him back into the darkness. He ran toward the center of the clearing, toward the road, and jumped over a broken guardrail. The air felt lighter, the fog thinning. The shadows screamed as they dissolved into nothingness, leaving the forest eerily silent. The phone fell from his hands. He picked it up once more. The screen was blank. The line was dead. Route 23 stretched before him, quiet, normal, as if nothing had ever happened. Arif stumbled to the edge of the road, breathing hard. His heart still raced, but relief washed over him. He looked back once toward the forest. No figure, no shadow, just the trees swaying gently in the morning breeze. Ethan's voice, faint but clear, whispered in his memory, not from the phone. "Thank you, Arif. You survived." Arif sank to the ground, exhausted, trembling, and watched as the sun rose higher, burning away the last of the mist. The road was empty, peaceful again. But deep inside, he knew it wasn't over. Somewhere, in the dark corners of Route 23, the calls still waited. And though he had survived this night, Arif understood the truth of the dead man's call. Some voices never die, some shadows never rest, and some calls you can never ignore. He drove away from Route 23 that morning, the forest behind him silent, but his mind echoing with a single warning. The next call could come at any moment.